listen, the wheels have come off the wagon.
How do you mean?
And I respect people's views and what they want to do, and they're elected official, and I'm not, so they can introduce legislation that they want. But some of this, it's difficult to understand that this is how we should use the power of government.
Give me an example.
Okay, an example. So we have to set hot-cold standards so that if you have a work environment that is below 60 degrees, then you have to have an extra amount of time per hour in order to have a break. You have to be protected from the cold, and there has to be somebody who watches over you to make sure that you don't freeze. And if it's above 90 degrees, it's the same thing. And I don't know how you deal with like short line cooks or people that's in a kitchen because you can't shield them from the heat.
Let's have a conversation with the one and only conqueror and destroyer of Colorado, Ted Trimpa. But before that, like and subscribe our channel. Click that little bell icon for notifications and find the Devil's Advocate podcast on your favorite listening app. So Ted Trimpa, progressive conqueror, why do you hate the state of Colorado so much?
I love Colorado.
Well, doesn't mean you need to make love to it.
Yeah, well, that's true too. But your side in the early 90s, and actually late 90s, was controlling everything. The state was running into the ditch, and some people had to do something. And it wasn't just me, it was a lot of people. And so has it spun out a little bit? Is it a little bit more than what we had hoped? I have to be honest, I don't lie. I still read the Bible, and I don't want to get struck with lightning.
So you and I have had these conversations over the years, and they've always been great. And you have said every time when I say, hey, what do you think the biggest problem is going to be after the progressive takeover, which you and Al Yates and a few very good strategists and a lot of great donors really put a long-term plan in, built a lot of political infrastructure that took time, but it swung the state along with a lot of demographic changes here. And every time I ask you about, well, what's the risk? You've always said hubris. It's always been the word you've used, whether we're having a drink here or we're having a drink someplace else. I think I know what you're talking about. I believe the progressives that run Colorado are far out of step with the mainstream of Colorado.
Oh, completely.
Tell me why.
Completely.
What do you mean by that?
You think about when we started this effort, this whole group, back in 2003, 2004. We never thought at this moment in time we would be where we are today.
Where you have control of every branch of government and every large
city. We were
city.
hoping to have control, but just in terms of the policy shift and the overall political shift is something that we never thought would happen. I remember the days when Earth Justice was considered really left-wing, kind of out there. Of course you don't listen to them. You go to Conservation Colorado for environmental policy, and Earth Justice now is kind of a norm, which, God bless them all, have people that, not my people, but friends that are involved in it.
Oh, they're your people. You created this mess.
And I get it, but it's just like way far beyond where I think the state of Colorado is. We've got to remember, half the state is registered unaffiliated, half.
And growing.
And
what does that tell you?
To say this place is really liberal that's stretching it.
So let's go back to the beginning for a real quick overview. You worked for a handful of deep pocket funders who really wanted marriage equality. It seems like that was the main goal. That was the guiding North Star that started this investment in infrastructure that the left is now enjoying the benefits of. Is that a good way to put it?
I think that's too focused, because there really was an effort around we need to have Democrats elected, because overall social policy was going in the wrong direction. Some of the fiscal policy was going in the wrong direction. In terms of how we treated labor was going in the wrong direction. And there needed to be some balance. And so we needed to do something to create the balance. Now, was marriage a large driver for a lot of these donors? Of course, of course.
For Tim Gill, whom you represented and did incredible work with, that seemed like that was his issue. Am I wrong?
Oh, it was a big issue.
Yeah.
It was a big issue, but he cared about electing Democrats too. I mean,
But-
I wouldn't say that he's a Democrat.
But why?
But the tone of what was
why
going
did you
on in
want to
Congress.
elect Democrats? I always thought that marriage equality was
Well, I can
job
give you
one.
Keith King. I mean, this is going to be something that viewers aren't going to remember, but
We're old enough.
Mr. Waterbed from Colorado Springs, who thought he was going to be Speaker of the House and all kinds of social stuff that they were going to do. That drove a lot of us because we need to respond to something, much like people respond to AOC today, much like people respond to
I'm still
Bernie
stuck on
Sanders today.
Mr. Waterbed. There's a story there I don't remember.
Yeah, remember he the Waterbed King?
Was he? Did he sell
Oh,
water
I thought
bells?
so. I thought so. Yeah, maybe
All
I'm
right.
wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I had some dream about the fact that Keith King
We're
is the
both old
waterbed.
enough to actually remember waterbeds.
Yeah.
Is that like a futon?
Yeah.
What you put in, the system you put in, was detailed in a book called The Blueprint. Adam Schrager and
Rob Whitwer.
one more time.
Rob Whitwer.
Rob Whitwer, of course, put together a great book that really explained it. And that book is like 10 years old now or something. It's
At least.
ridiculous. Now, give me some examples of how you think it has gone too far progressive and is out of step with mainstream Colorado.
There's
What
a
makes you say that?
Democratic Socialist Caucus in the House. Who would have ever thought there was going to be a Democratic Socialist Caucus in the House? I mean, if you would have told me that in 2005, 6, 7, 8, I would have laughed. Like, oh no, that's not going to happen. But there was a tragic, and I use the word purposely, tragic mistake, and that was not playing in primaries early enough. Had we started playing
the
in
Democratic
primaries
side.
on the Democratic side, I think a lot of this could have not been prevented, but I think we could have guided this in a little bit of a different way. Because when you don't have this counterbalance of force, then you're going to, I think, it's just kind of a natural thing, you're going to start to drift, and we start to drift left because the Republican Party is a joke. I mean, Dave Williams, give me a break. I mean, I do think he's our secret weapon because that's how we can keep winning. But you know what?
there are those of us who
I don't
wonder.
want the weapon anymore.
Really? Why?
No.
Let's dive into that part, and I don't want to go into the Republican dysfunction because it's at this point nearly irrelevant. When Republicans are almost a super minority, they're a distraction. The party is non-existent in my mind.
But the ideas of the party, I think, are still there. I think the conservatism is still there. When you take a look at tax policy, other fiscal policy, I think even on education, to a certain extent.
I think those are mainstream Colorado ideas that most Coloradans agree with.
And I tell you, Republicans start orienting themselves around these kinds of issues again. I do not accept that the Republican Party as a party in terms of a movement people can associate with and vote for is dead. I just don't.
But right now, it's irrelevant.
That is true.
It is, and so focusing on it, I know the media likes to focus on every embarrassing thing the party does, which is a daily occurrence. But what I think they're missing, the big story in Colorado, is this brewing battle inside the Democratic Party. That there are Democrats who, I believe, unlike you, are too scared to say, we've gone too far, we are out of step, we need to pull in some of the wackier socialists. That Colorado's not a socialist, progressive, re-education camp of a
That's
place.
totally true. It's totally true. It's like you have those private conversations. Well,
Tell me
tell me
about those conversations.
I can't say this in other places, but I agree that we've
So
gone
you're
too far.
hearing that from
we need to do something about it. How do I say, not necessarily how do I say something about it, but what do we do about it?
So those conversations are happening in your
absolutely,
world.
Absolutely.
And
you have conversations among Democrats that say, we have too many far left people, and now all the far left people that are watching this are never going to talk to me again. But so be it. It is a true issue within the Democratic Party, a true issue. And the challenge is that the party can't be defined as just that piece of the left. Because you can throw red meat at a dinner. You can throw out all kinds of lines that gin up everybody that's in the crowd. But what you're doing is ginning up 30% of the electorate, because that's the electorate that's registered as Democrats. And all those Democrats aren't lefties. And so there is bound to be some type of split. Bound to
You
be.
and I are old enough to remember Democrats were the farthest thing from socialists. Democrats, Roy Romer owned a John Deere dealership. He was a farmer. They understood creation. They understood business.
When we did elections in 2004, we purposely didn't use the word Democrat. We just, get a bottle of wine and say, how are we going to name this 527?
Right.
Moving Colorado forward, it's great. Don't you want a good neighborhood? That's not quite exactly accurate, but it's something like that.
You never said elect Democrats.
Never.
Right.
We do today.
So talk to me just a bit about these quiet conversations, because on the other side, we have these conversations all the time, which is like, these people are crazy. When are they going to stand up to the crazies in their own party? Or do they not see they are the reason Trump won in other states? That it's this
they
type
don't
of
believe
policy.
that. A lot of those
Really?
folks don't believe that. They believe that we haven't been loud enough. We haven't been. And
So in other words,
this is going to sound
Dave
pejorative,
Williams,
that we haven't been left enough.
just like Dave Williams says, if we stand up and say burn gay pride flags louder, that's going to get the people in the middle.
Yeah, no, it's very much like that. Very much like that.
Why don't mainstream Democrats stand up against the crazy wing of the party? And I'll put Polis there, and I know he does a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but he sure caves. I mean, I think about gun control
I don't think he caves.
You and I will fight over this. He knows better on gun control, but he has signed the worst gun control packages. He knows it about the economy, yet he's put into these minimum wage laws.
He supported every tax decrease that you've wanted.
2, and he didn't
Okay,
lead the
it's
charge.
2.
He led.
It's 2.
He led after we won twice. He was a leader after victory twice. But I mean, when it comes to environmental policy and energy policy, he has put some of the wackiest people in his administration. The new rules are crazy.
Oh my gosh, but given the environment that he's operating in, I go back to my earth justice comments, all of a sudden that gets normalized. I don't think he had any choice but to play just to the right of that, because that's a caucus that you need to deal with. It's an issue that he cares a lot about, that you're going to fundamentally disagree with him on a lot of that, but even those fundamental disagreements, you can get to just right of the left of this movement, and I think he's played that really well, really well.
I don't doubt his
actually not chagrin, to damage to a lot of independents and smaller operators. I get that, but I think you have to give the governor some good credit for how he's managed that. These aren't caucuses that are easy to manage.
Back to the question. Why is it that people in mainstream Democratic circles do not stand up to the Democratic socialists, as you put it? I'll call them communists. Why haven't they stood up and said, I am not with these people. We need to have this fight, and we need to do it now to save the party?
Okay, I'm going to be a little flip, but there's a certain part of me that says we need to buy a bunch of rebar and throw it up the backsides of a lot of people to give them some spines to actually say something, because those conversations are actually happening. I think part of the issue too, though, is that people within these caucuses are scared because they want to win, and they see, I could have a primary, they could threaten me. It's much like what's happening to—
They are scared of the fringe of their party.
Which is not where Colorado is. But the number of people that are in the proverbial middle, it's relatively small at this point. And the ones that are willing to stand up and say something, and I get it, they're worried about getting primaried.
Isn't it funny?
And they want to keep their seat.
Tell me if I'm wrong. They are now what the Republicans were. People didn't want to stand up to Dudley Brown or some other crazy, out of touch.
I was on your shows years ago and said exactly that. What's happening to the Republican Party today, which was back when we used to do it around the table,
right,
was going to happen to us. And lo and behold, I'm not calling myself prescient, but I said, this is going to happen, and it is. And the challenge is that we didn't play enough in primaries early enough, and you can't use the thumb of money now in order to fix these. You can do one-offs and affect elections, but to say that you're going to do something about the overall dynamic of where the party is drifting, it's just not possible with just money.
You and I got to know each other you were such an important leader in the gay rights movement, such an important guy on marriage equality and civil unions before the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage.
I'm going to have a sunburn for all this sunshine you're blowing at me.
No, but it's true, isn't it? I mean,
I was involved.
You were one of the crucial guys who was one of the advisors of where the money should be spent, how it should be spent, and you were a conduit that got lots of different parts of the movement to talk to one another.
Yeah.
All right, and that,
That's true.
trust me, I'm just giving you reality. Now I look at it that gay rights is ho-hum. We don't care. We don't care that you're gay. We don't care if you get married.
I'm just a white guy now.
Yeah, well, that's why we hate you. You're just a
literally, I'm just a white guy now.
I don't think your party understands how much the woke trans movement is turning off people in the middle. I think it is one of the three.
It's a tragic mistake.
I think it's one of the three reasons Trump won: inflation, crazy immigration, and boys doing girl sports and having to call men she. You said it's crazy. What do you mean?
It's crazy in terms of what happened, in terms of how we dealt with it, because I think it's true, and it's something that a number of us talked about when the marriage decision, we knew it was going to come down. We were hoping it was going to come down the right way. There was that last Friday in June in 2015, and there was a current.
Ago.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? That's when I proposed to my husband, was that weekend at Gay Pride.
I imagine a lot of proposals happened that weekend.
And at that time, a number of us said, we're going to hit a cliff. Because all of a sudden, a lot of people within the community go, we have what we wanted. So we're going to go someplace else. And who gets left in the dust? Trans. And then you look at where trans is and what they're trying to do on policy. For years, we had been researching how people react to that. And, non-discrimination numbers, hate crime numbers were in the 70s. People were all about it.
What do you mean?
They were favorable.
They were favorable to trans.
Favorable to trans. You drop sports into it, like a rock, 30 points. I mean, it like goes in the tank. And a number of us said, let's figure out a path now so we don't run into this train. Because once we run into that train, we're not going to be able to stop it. Because what happens is you have the reaction of, we don't want a biological male playing in female sports. Then all of a sudden that energizes people. They don't like trans. If you have a penis, you're a boy. If you have a vagina, you're a girl. And that's the only two things that you can be. And all of a sudden, a certain segment of society, granted a certain really small percentage, but you're now saying you don't exist. You're not real. Everything that you thought and everything that you're feeling, okay, well, you're wrong. Because me, as straight white guy, or straight white woman, or even black or whatever race, is saying, well, I just don't believe you exist because it's boy or girl. And what I find fascinating about this argument could be applied to gays. I remember this vividly. Well, if you can't reproduce, then how are you really a male? Because the purpose of a male is to have sex with a female and to have a child. Well, if you are choosing not to do that, then, well, really gay doesn't exist. It's just like saying I want to wear a blue jacket. And I don't see how the argument is that much different from then to what they're saying today.
Couldn't disagree with you more, but let me go back to a previous thing you said. You said, we dropped the ball. When the decision came, we didn't address that. When the decision came to legalize gay marriage from the Supreme Court, limited government people dropped the ball as well, maybe even more, because I am convinced a third, a half of gay people are me. They want government out of our lives. They want to be left alone. They don't want any government interference.
I completely agree.
We missed an opportunity to welcome those people, the Leave Me Alone gay coalition, and say, there's a home for you here.
No, I totally believe that.
But because you had to combine yourself with progressives and socialists and communists to get to where you are, it was really difficult to
Come
get
on,
them.
aligning with communists and socialists. Give me a break.
Did they not?
John? No.
So how would all the
We
socialists...
did not. The gay rights community did not sit down and say, oh, gee whiz, where's Lenin? Let's find Lenin and
You just said
align
we've got
ourselves with him.
democratic socialists there.
Right,
How
but that
did
has
they vote
nothing
on
to
it?
do with the gay rights
You
movement.
missed the
No,
point.
come on.
You know the point here. The point is that if you were gay and you wanted gay marriage, and that was your thing, you had to join Team Left. That was the team that helped
but there
you.
were people on Team Right.
There were those of
supported
us on
marriage.
Team Right who wanted
enough,
it too.
but-
Not enough. But once it happened and it was solved, it was done. Something that happened in our lifetime when you and I were young, we never thought it would happen.
No, I thought I'd be dead.
Yeah, and it's amazing how quickly.
I said that. I thought there were going to be states with civil unions,
Right.
states with domestic partnerships, states with nothing. And the issue would be when couples go from state to state, how you deal with that. So you need AGs in order to figure that out.
The cultural change in just 20 years from when Colorado passed a constitutional amendment to ban gay marriage to last year when overwhelmingly the same state pulled it out of their constitution is a cultural change of amazing proportion.
True.
My point being, one, that we who believe in limited government missed an opportunity to grab a lot of those folks and say, isn't it great when government's out of your hair, and as they should be out of your hair in marriage?
But see, the gay rights community has evolved today. Pick a gay rights organization, and I complain about this a lot now. The Human Rights Campaign, is it really a GLBT organization? Isn't it just another democratic organization? I mean, it's you see them and they're just like signing on to all these progressive issues, which many of which I agree with, but it's like, who are you and what are you? It's like the gay flag today. It's like, how many colors can we put on a flag? I mean, it's become, we're going to give homage or some recognition to various segments of the minorities within society, and we're all going to be part of the GLBT community. And I don't think that's fair to the community. I don't think it's fair to them.
So you're also being a hateful person by not adding the extra letters QITA plus whatever.
I'm not an acronym. Right. I'm not an acronym.
So back to your point, I believe it's more than just boys and girls sports. I believe it was the veracity of the pronoun police. I believe it was the veracity of taking our little kids and having the genderbread man in school to teach you about the 68 different genders. And
right.
what I'll use the word, you won't like it, but the indoctrination of our kids. It was watching kids want to mutilate themselves before they're 18 years old and can make decisions on their own.
And you're not using biased language at all. I just let's like put it on the record. You're being completely upfront and balanced in terms of how you're describing it.
For me, and we've been through this before, for me, what bothered me was the forced speech, that I have to look at somebody who, to me, is a man who has an XY chromosome, and I've got to say, he's a she. And it's like, I won't do that because I'm not going to be forced to lie. It was things like changing birth certificates.
Come on.
Let me finish this. Hang on, and you can tell me what a hateful man I am. Changing governmental records, saying this birth certificate or this driver's license, which is, we go to the government to hold truth and to say, he was a female at birth. It bothers me that these fundamental records, governmental records, can be scrubbed and changed. And so Trump won, not only because of inflation, not only because of immigration, but people really reacted to having that stuff pushed.
But see, you have a fundamental...
First, tell me, am I wrong that wasn't a big issue for Trump's victory in other states?
Okay, it was a big issue. I get that. I want to go to the core of how you get to where you ended up. And that is, you have a fundamental misunderstanding gender dysphoria and what it means to be trans. Because you self-identify. It's like, I might be biologically one sex, but I feel like I'm the other sex.
No, I'm sure that happens.
Right. And
I don't care.
And that's why you have a pronoun that reflects who you feel and know you are, rather than you have to pull down their pants to see if the pronoun matches.
I am so awful that I follow the science. And the science of chromosomes.
The science says that gender dysphoria exists.
Of course gender dysphoria exists.
So then how can you say that you can't respect pronouns? Come on.
Does it change your chromosomes? No, it does not.
Well, no, of course not.
Of course not. So to force me to call somebody who has an XY chromosome something else is forced speech.
Oh,
and what's so weird? Let me finish the thought.
Everything in your life is driven by what science says.
I try my very best. Yes, indeed. And free speech.
And
Wait,
I have
stop.
to say, science.
Wait. There was a time when progressives were the people who protected free speech. And what I see now is, and the reaction is quite the opposite. Conservatives now are the ones who do it. I don't care that somebody thinks that he is a she. More power to them. I protect your right to do that. What I want is the exact same respect going this way. And that's what I don't get from the trans movement, which is you accept me as what I think I am, or what I feel I am, or what I know I am.
You're being pejorative when you talk about it that way.
But it's not wrong. But you will not, you have to identify me as I identify myself, not as you identify me. And that is the intolerance.
No,
refuse to do it.
You're using free speech to go back and justify your fundamental misunderstanding what trans is.
Thank you for calling me stupid.
I'm not calling you stupid.
I follow the science.
I'm not calling you stupid.
People have either XX or XY chromosomes.
So in other words, you fall into the camp that trans doesn't exist.
Oh.
It's basically if I feel like I'm cool today, I'm cool today, but don't say that I'm cool.
You can say you're cool. You can say you're a woman.
Oh, John,
you can believe you're a woman. But because you believe you're a woman, I won't.
That one's tough for me.
Of course it's tough for you, but the arrogance.
We need to accept the fact.
Hang on. The arrogance. When people think, hey, I believe I'm this, you must accept me. If I said, I truly believe, hang on. If I truly feel like I'm 25 years old, will you identify me as 25 years old? Don't say it's not a good analogy because it's a good analogy.
Not.
Will you?
It's not.
Will you?
This is, okay.
Will you?
I'm going to introduce a new element to this.
Answer the damn question.
Respect. Why can't you respect somebody?
Why can't you respect my decision to be 25? If I believe I'm 25 years old, I'm asking you, plain fact, will you accept?
I think I'm 20. Okay, well, you have to say I'm 25 years old.
If you believe you're 25, I guess I'll have to call you. If you believe,
all of a sudden,
the trans silliness, then what's wrong?
Trans silliness?
Silliness. If you believe, you haven't answered my question, and I'm not going to leave until you do. Let me try it again.
Repeat the question, and I will answer it.
If I truly feel and know in my heart that I am 25 years old, and I am not what nature tells me, my biological age tells me, will you call me 25 years old? Can I change my records to say I'm 25? Don't just answer the damn question.
I'm going to answer it. You have a fundamental misunderstanding of what trans is. This is an answer.
Okay,
this is an answer. It is different to say that I feel like that I'm a biological male, but I know that I'm a woman. That's different. That's different from saying
I'm all of a sudden
going to make up that I'm 25.
No, I'm not making it up. If I say I understand the world thinks I'm 60, but I know, and I truly know.
Okay, so the science, there is a gender age-phoria.
Yes.
That
then can I change my driver's license?
You can have a psychological condition that you believe you're a different age, and people have to recognize the fact that you believe you're a different age.
Would you support that? I wouldn't.
Oh, come on, because the scientific community, you're all about science, scientific community doesn't support that.
Neither does science support more than two biological sexes.
Gender dysphoria exists.
So why do I have to bend for somebody else's dysphoria? Why do I have to change my language?
Okay, you're just playing off of the word dysphoria.
You're the one who brought it into the conversation.
I know, but that's the technical.
So if somebody has
that's
dysphoria,
the scientific term.
Yes, you believe you're.
I love you. We're doing this.
I do. But you're avoiding the question. You see why?
Oh, I keep answering the question. You're not getting the answer you want to hear. This is like arguing with my husband, Mr. Right-winger cultist.
No, what you want what you want.
You ask a question because you want an answer that you're not going to hear, so therefore you can get mad.
No, what I want is to force people to feel the absolute hypocrisy of the trans fascism. Yes, I said that. That if you don't call me she, you're a hater. When in fact, you might be being true to yourself.
That's
you
not
also
hater.
right.
That's being disrespectful.
Oh, that's another way to shame
Okay,
people.
now
That's another way
listen,
to shame people into their speech.
I will give you this. I get the obsession around pronouns. I won't do he, him, whatever it is on my email. I won't do it.
I cannot say they is over
get that,
there.
because I don't need to restate who I know I am. I don't.
And it's not my responsibility to keep up with what you think you are.
But it's your responsibility to respect people
And I do
for
respect
something
you.
for something that scientifically has been shown exists.
My son thinks he's a race car and he has Down syndrome, but no one is forced to recognize him.
So when you call up the American Psychological Association and you ask, is there a recognized condition of someone thinks they're a race car? I think the answer you're going to get is no.
Don't be too certain.
Oh,
and if
good grief.
if there is a psychological
You're now
condition,
gonna tell
if there
me
is a
Kennedy
mental
was-
condition, hang on. If there's a mental condition, notice how we're not saying mental illness, because heaven forbid we say that there are biological men who think they're women. Great. If there is a biological 60-year-old who thinks he's 25, then we need to honor that as well, and I should be able to change. And I should be able to change. And I should be able to change my driver's license. And birth
John,
certificate.
this horse is so dead.
But all right, let's get back to the question. I believe this, what we're doing right now, and this whole thing of you don't respect us if you are true to your beliefs that there are two
That's
genders.
not belief. It's a definition of who you are.
That's another way of shaming people to say you're a hater. You should be ashamed that you don't respect
No one's
these
saying
people.
you're a hater.
Yes, of course
There
it
may be
is.
people on the woke side, the left side will say that that's the case, and that's part of our problem. We shouldn't have people
Get back to
saying
the
that.
politics of
I
it.
totally get it.
This is, I believe, one of the major three reasons Trump
And we're
won.
in this place because they didn't handle sports in the right way. And had we figured out something on sport, there are weight classes for wrestling. Why couldn't there have been something for sports? This just lit a fire that now is so big, I don't know how you control it.
I'm convinced this issue is brewing in Colorado. While Colorado will not in the next 10
So
years.
how's it brewing in Colorado?
Hang on,
I mean,
here it goes. For the next 10 years, this is not going to turn into an anti-abortion state. This is not going to turn into an anti-LGBT state. It's not going to turn into an anti-environmentalist state or even an anti-weed state. But I'm telling you, that swing suburban mom is getting worried about trans indoctrination in schools. That suburban mom is not enjoying the idea of this forced trans wokeism.
Chicken Little, table for one, Chicken Little. What, we're supposed to trip around clouds?
No, we're supposed to keep sex ed out of or keep not sex ed. Keep this crap out of 6-year-olds. My point being, I believe.
So I bet you think drag queens coming in and reading to children is indoctrination.
Partly I do, yeah. Do 6-year-olds need to know what a drag queen is?
Of course, why not?
Of course. Why do they need to
not?
know what a drag queen is at 6 years old?
Oh, come on.
You just said, of course.
Kids are smarter. Kids are smarter than you think because it's reality. They exist.
Of course they exist. All sorts of weird things. And strippers exist, but I don't know if we need to have strippers.
So drag queens are now strippers.
You said they exist. Do strippers not exist?
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness is not a response, my friend.
So you can say we should have murderers come in because murderers exist.
Well, that was your argument. Excuse me.
Exist.
Ted Trimpa,
Therefore,
your argument was they exist, so they should come in and read to 6-year-olds. That's a big door you just opened.
Oh, happily.
Happily. All right.
Happily.
Now we know when something exists force it on
Oh,
6-year-olds.
come on. Everything in life has common sense boundaries.
And
Has
drag
religion-
queens reading to 6-year-olds has no common sense boundary?
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on, it's
You
not a
know-
response,
how
it's a
many-
stalling
how-
tactic.
No, okay. How many drag queens do you know that you'd be like, oh my God, I wouldn't want them talking to my kid? How many? I bet 0, because you don't know any.
Actually, you're absolutely wrong. I do know some drag queens.
And you're really
they're-
worried about them indoctrinating your child.
I wouldn't want them around my 6-year-old in drag. I have no problem with it. I'm not saying trans people shouldn't be around kids at all. Some people do say that. I find that to be too much.
Oh. Drag queens aren't necessarily trans.
Oh my God, we're so confused. I got to learn your 68 things.
But it's the truth.
And this is why.
Drag queens, it's
Do you have
theater,
all right,
it's performance
Let me try it
art.
this way before we beat this dead horse.
We
Do
haven't
you
only
understand?
beat it, we've like chopped
Chopped
it
it.
into
All right.
pieces.
Then let me move it from this to this. Do you understand the conversation we just had is a reason Trump won?
Yeah, totally get that.
Why? Why is that?
Because we screwed up the politics in the beginning, so therefore this conversation starts to happen. Had we
You don't think
done
that the
some-
trans thing outside of sports has gone too far?
No, I don't think it would have been a conversation because I think people would have been in the same place about non-discrimination. They would have been in the same place about accepting people who they are. They would have been in the same place about we should have hate crime statutes around that. I mean,
Hate crime statutes around what? That I couldn't call a man a man?
Gender identity should be part of hate crime. And by the way, newsflash, it is part of the law in Colorado who let it become law? Bill Owens.
Let what become law?
Transgender is part of hate crime statutes.
Okay. As it should
And
be.
has the world come apart?
No.
You know, did buildings like collapse?
But what you don't get is that there are people who go to work, and when they call what they perceive to be a man, a biological man, a man, and they get called to HR or lose their job or get kicked out of college for it. And then from their point of view, they don't want to lie. They don't want to be forced to say something they don't believe.
Okay, so the
It's
same
going to-
thing.
it's going to
so
have
if
a
somebody
reaction.
says they're gay in a workplace, and you stand up and say, you know what, I don't believe in that, so therefore I am not going to recognize you as gay. And the fact that you have a picture with your husband or with your wife on your desk, you have to move that because you know what? I find that personally offensive to me because I don't believe it.
Oh.
Do you think that's right?
No, of
Then
course
how
not.
is a trans thing different?
Because I'm not
Because
saying...
you fundamentally
you
don't
don't-
understand what trans means.
No, you don't fundamentally understand what forced speech is and manipulation.
I'm
And
rolling
that's
my
what-
eyes on purpose.
You're very good. You're very good at that. Oh, I'm so offended. Oh my! How could you be such a hater? You're just ignorant.
I
You're
should play
just
soccer.
ignorant.
I should play soccer.
Yeah, really.
So that way, when you get hit, I act like I'm
Because
more
those of
hurt
us-
than I really am.
Those of us who believe that there are biological men and biological women, and that records that show that, government records that show that, shouldn't be changed.
That's so ridiculous.
What?
Why not?
Then my age should be. We're going to go. We're going to go in circles. We're going to go in circles.
Right.
Let's move this.
Let's give.
Let's get back. Let's get back to
No.
Colorado.
We're going to go down this path a little bit.
All right.
Let's give a real world example of why it is right to change the records. So you are a biological male and you identify as female.
Great.
And that's how you
More power
present
to you.
Yourself. That's who you believe you are.
More power to
and
you.
And you are driving down a highway and you speed and cop pulls you over. He's a local sheriff who may not be the most enlightened person, sorry for like dissing on sheriffs, pulls you over and you come out and you, under your interpretation, have to show an ID that says you're a male. And they're going to look at you and go, wait a minute, you're not a drag queen, because drag queens and trans people are different. There's something wrong, so I'm going to hold you. I'm going to check you. How do you respond to that?
I'm going to tell you a little secret.
What's the
Here's
secret?
the secret. Most trans people don't look like
They don't
RuPaul.
speed? They don't
No,
speed?
they don't look like, what's his name? RuPaul. They don't look, trans people, dudes in dresses.
RuPaul is a drag queen, not a trans person.
But she's really good at it. And we need to know the difference. The point
Okay,
being,
this comes back to fundamental
being-
misunderstanding of this.
point being, most people who are trans, it's easy to tell, and you know that to be true.
Oh,
You say, "Oh, come
Okay.
on," because that's one of your best
I
comebacks.
respect you. I love you. That is one of the most ignorant statements you've ever made.
All right, I say
That
it.
all trans.
No, I didn't say that.
You
Did
can
I say
tell.
all that? Did I say
because
that?
the biological
Did I
males that
say
identify
that?
as females
This
have
is-
hairy
this
legs
is why-
and bad wigs
This
and
is
miscolored
why
dresses.
we hate this, because you just lied of what I said. Did I say all people? All trans people?
Oh,
Did I?
no.
No.
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you
I'll give
look
that.
at the article of the trans person up in Loveland who threw Molotov cocktails at the Tesla dealership? And they showed her picture. And it was a dude.
So what? So, okay, first of all, one, throwing a Molotov cocktail at anything is wrong.
wrong.
I get that. So a fat person throws something at something else, and you're going to be like, oh, well, geez.
Well, as long as he identifies,
that doesn't look
as
like
long
a
as he
normal
identifies
person.
as thin, he can
Oh,
change.
somebody,
He
that
can change his weight on his driver's license because he feels differently about that.
he should
On his
be
birth
able,
certificate.
she should be able to change what sex that they identify as.
I would love it if the same rules of this applied to other science. That, well, as long as you really
Other
believe.
science, this is part of science. Again,
not
fundamental
science.
misunderstanding of what
All right.
transgender means.
So this thing elected Trump. What will this argument that we're having?
I agree. It was
What will
an
this argument-
unfortunate, despicable tactic that when you see it, it turned my stomach. I'm like, I cannot believe this. I don't see the
What
difference.
tactic? Be specific.
The ads that they had about trans, I don't see a difference if they would have run ads. Well, gee whiz, he has a penis, so therefore he should be with somebody that produces children. And he's not. Oh my gosh. So therefore that's a threat to society and suburban women should be running away.
Let me offer this, and you don't have to accept it, but let me offer this up. The difference that I see is that when a gay person says, I am gay, what that means is I am sexually attracted to people of my own sex. Well, then we agree on a term. And
How is that different from trans?
Because
I don't get it.
when a trans person says, I am a woman, and I go, you are not a biological
You
woman.
identify as a woman.
Great.
That's why it says gender identity.
Great. Then on the driver's license, if it said gender identity, fine, but it doesn't. It says sex, and it says F, and you've changed a government document. And for people,
Right, because you're changing government document because that's the right thing to do. Sex. What? Okay, John.
this is- and this
answer
is
this
why.
question.
And this is why.
What is the difference between the word sex and gender? And don't tell me, because
I
one
see
of the
no-
differences is sex is a verb, and here it's not a verb.
Okay, to be honest, I don't find a difference. And I believe there are two genders or two sexes, however you want to put it. There are biological
So why couldn't you
oddities.
have gender identity? This is who you identify as.
Fine.
How do you deal? I mean, you
Well,
have
what I
you
hate
haven't
is just
answered this
the-
question. How do you deal with? And there are a lot of them, and you clearly have never met them. People that are trans that you would never know, you would not know, and they go out and they're involved in some altercation, or they get stopped by the police in some place, and somebody looks at the ID, and because you say that it has to be what your biological sex is, they look at it and go, okay, this is suspicious. What does this mean? So maybe I think about immigration. So they're coming in from, let's say they get pulled out of the line. They're coming in from France. They're coming in from Britain. They're coming in from Germany. And it's like, oh, gee whiz, we're going to randomly pick some people out. And they look at the passport and it's like, well, gee whiz, the passport says you're male. And I look at your picture. Well, I look at you and gee whiz, you have this wonderful Givenchy, dress
dress
on.
so well.
You have Louboutin heels. You are, literally made up to the nines. And you wouldn't know that that was a male to female. What do you think that passport official is going to do? They're going to look at it and go, oh yeah, okay, that's fine. You're totally different from what your passport
So
says.
here was my suggestion, and I put this out years ago, is that instead of M and F on government documents, we put XX or XY. That this is a verifiable.
So how is that different?
What do you mean?
How?
All right,
I mean,
we're not going to solve this.
Yeah,
all right?
we're not.
What I'm going to say is, I
I'm going
believe.
to reiterate, I love you.
I love you too. We've been friends for a long time, but your husband's right. And
Yeah, like 10% of the time.
if this is part of that 10%, he's there. How do you keep that up, by the way? Arash is just such a great guy.
You know
He's so
how?
smart.
How? Respect and empathy. If
only that went-
society,
if
if
only that
society
went
had
two ways.
more respect and empathy, and I would add to that love, and I mean in the philosophical way, there's so much we can
understand
do.
from my point of view.
There's going to be fundamental. For example, we have a fundamental disagreement.
Right.
This fundamental disagreement is not going to affect our friendship.
Absolutely not.
If anything, in some ways, make it stronger because we have something to argue about.
Yeah. As we always have for the years we've known each other.
Why shouldn't we have that as a society in a broader sense?
Let me say this, and I offer this. When you say respect and empathy, I see that as a one-way street
Really?
from
How?
the trans community, because there is no respect coming this way that I refuse to call someone who is XY she. And I feel no respect. Hang on, just accept this for a second.
Okay.
I feel no respect. I feel no empathy. I feel no, hey, you have a different opinion, but we honor that. We feel none of that. What we do feel is, as in this conversation, if you don't use these terms, you're ignorant, you're disrespectful, you have no empathy.
Which is everything I've said about you today.
That I don't. But you know me. Do I not have respect? Do I not have empathy?
No, you do. You have all
right.
that. You have
Yeah.
all that.
All
You have all that.
Let's just take the last 5 minutes here and switch gears to this legislative session.
Oh my goodness. Circus.
Circus. Tell me why it's a circus.
Oh, listen, the wheels have come off the wagon.
How do you mean?
And I respect people's views and what they want to do, and they're elected official, and I'm not, so they can introduce legislation that they want. But some of this, it's difficult to understand that this is how we should use the power of government.
Give me an example.
Okay, an example. So we have to set hot-cold standards so that if you have a work environment that is below 60 degrees, then you have to have an extra amount of time per hour in order to have a break. You have to be protected from the cold, and there has to be somebody who watches over you to make sure that you don't freeze. And if it's above 90 degrees, it's the same thing. And I don't know how you deal with like short line cooks or people that's in a kitchen because you can't shield them from the heat. That
The guy in the smelter is going to have a good
That
job.
is
An economy killer.
is a circus.
It's also an economy
And
killer.
people who introduced it have all due respect. You have the right to introduce that legislation, but it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's kind of hard to look at that bluntly and not kind of chuckle
But for the same reason that
and be depressed.
that Denver has lost nearly 300 restaurants.
Oh, it's ridiculous. You couldn't open a restaurant in Denver right now if you try.
A lot of it has to do with Family Leave Act and minimum wage. And even when they talk about...
It's the energy regulations, the things that you have to
energy
comply
reg-
with. I don't think it's the Family Leave Act. I don't think it's minimum wage.
I
That's
think
preventing
I
restaurants.
think they're
Listen,
little
I'm not a
weights, little
restaurateur, but when you have major restaurateurs signing a joint letter, sending it to the mayor saying, these conditions, economic conditions, are not conducive to be able to operate, that is saying something. They're putting on a public document. We, the undersigned, are saying enough is enough. You think about where real estate is downtown, where the retail environment is downtown. I live downtown. If you are west of Larimer, so around Union Station, it's vibrant. It's fun to be around. You go east of that, the farther east you go, the more troubling it gets. And it should not be like that. And I don't know necessarily specifically how you fix it, but there needs to be a more pro-business environment. There needs to be something that's pro-retail. Because we can do all the kind of magic we want on the 16th
What would
Street
that
Mall.
pro-retail be?
All the magic.
What would it be?
But there has to be a way to attract retail down there. I don't know if
would be
that's...
what?
I don't know if that's some type of tax incentive. I don't know if that's some type of property tax
How about
relief.
enforce the law, get
Listen, I'm all
criminals
about
off
that.
the streets?
I'm all about that.
and lower the cost
This is where
to
I'm
employ
conservative.
people? the Denver Green Buildings Code.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
No, the requirements that you have to have what passed in terms of what you have to have on your roofs. I mean, okay, that's great in terms of some altruistic goal, but realistically, in terms of how you're actually going to make that happen, and these are the people that provide the jobs. These are the people that own the real estate. These are the people that actually build things downtown, that open up restaurants, and you're now telling them that you have all of these added requirements because if you just do it in downtown Denver, it's going to change climate change.
Why don't the progressives in the legislature understand these simple economic realities?
Because they have a different ideology. I mean, I respect that. They have a different ideology. And
Which is what?
I'm going to argue against it. I'm going to say that I don't agree. I'm not going to say that you're stupid, that you're wrong, that this is awful. I'm just going to say I don't agree with what that ideology is. I don't agree with what that policy prescription is. And let's debate it.
Do you believe, I'm going to use the same metaphor or analogy, that when the social right started saying, yeah, we're going to put 10 commandments in the classroom, we're going to be doing this 10, 15, 20 years ago, I believe the progressive left is there, doing it in the opposite direction. Stuff you're talking about. A code to say, we're going to put warning labels on propane tanks that you're killing the environment.
I see that argument.
And
I see that argument.
I see a huge opportunity for we limited government types in the coming future, because this is going to destroy our economy, and there will be, when money goes.
You know, how many times when you go into a bar, do you actually see? 2, do you actually read? And 3, do you actually absorb? And 4, do you really give a damn about those little signs? Drinking alcohol will do this to you, and it's a certain kind of impairment.
It does,
and you
because
you shouldn't be drinking that if you're pregnant.
As
and the next thing you know, you're going to be like wandering around the street.
As originally written, that bill had a $20,000 almost a day fine for doing that. It's not what's there.
Oh, that's crazy. I mean, like people need to be told that.
Yeah. What's your advice to Democrats in the state? The ones who have power over just about every aspect of government, certainly in the state level, in most cities. What is your advice for them?
Say no to hubris.
They don't see it.
Be smart about you have power. Utilize it in a way that, from my perspective, is going to be productive. And really think about not how you want the state to be, not how you think where the state is, but actually where it is. Because the demographics of the folks that we lost, just from pure politics, the demographics of folks that we lost in this last election are folks that traditionally we shouldn't be losing.
What do you mean lost in this election?
Oh my
in
God,
Colorado?
Latino men, Latino men.
Black men.
Married couples. The numbers that you see on married couples that didn't support Kamala Harris, or at least the decrease in the percentage, it's frightening. And if the Democratic Party stays where it is today, it's going to continue to perform like it is today. And you can look at what Trump is doing today, and I have to tell you, I'm shocked, I'm stunned, I'm dismayed, I'm partially depressed, I can't believe it. But a lot of that is a reaction to what people are saying. So you're going to do an 8% reduction in in the workforce. Okay, that's 8 out of 100. People are going to look at that and go, well, 8 out of 100, shouldn't it be 12? And you take the education department, granted, that's a different example. I think all of that is ridiculous. Taking FAA people away, taking scientific folks away, taking research away, USAID, taking that away. I mean, they've totally forgotten the idea of soft power. You don't exercise power just by being like a dictator, which is what they're thinking that they can do. All of that, we need to be thinking about. But the way we combat this, it isn't standing on a street corner and screaming and thinking everybody's going to understand it. It's not just suing and saying we're going to use the courts in order to fight back on you. It has to be using the process of the election, the legislative process in order to try to fight back. But more importantly, and this is the one piece that I think we all should be thinking about, every time these actions happen, ask this question. Is that reasonable? Don't talk about fair. Fair is a loaded term. Life is unfair. But is it reasonable? Because over time, this is going to build where
question
people...
was the Democrats.
Yeah.
And by the way, just my quick tangent. I never thought I would be delighted with something as stupid as Gulf of America. And the reason I am delighted with something as stupid as Gulf of America is because, God, do you get paid by the eye roll like a teenage girl?
Yeah, no, I think I do. A teenage boy.
It depends on how you identify.
That is true.
When we get jammed with, well, it's no longer Mount Evans, who was a great governor of the state of Colorado. It's now Mount Blue Sky. And when I see...
because, you know, we really need to idolize and name things after people that were known racists. Okay.
The guy...
Fine with me.
Without Evans...
What would happen if he was an anti-Semite? If he's an anti-Semite, would you, like, say that that's okay? Probably not.
Yeah, Jefferson High School, Jefferson was a slave owner. Blah, blah, blah. It's terrible. But the point being that all that crap of renaming things by whoever's in politics now, whoever happens to have the majority now, we're going to change the name, we're going to change the name, we're going to change the name. When I see leftists going, Gulf of America, it's like, oh, you know what that feels like? That's exactly what it feels like. Yeah, it's stupid.
Okay,
it's dumb.
Listen, I see your point. It's dumb.
It.
So what do you think about Mount McKinley? He picks McKinley. First of all, McKinley was never in Alaska, one.
I don't care.
Died too soon, so he couldn't go.
I don't care.
Three,
you know
was Mr. Tariff, so that's the reason why they picked them. And everyone, not everyone, the majority of the establishment, including Republicans, said you shouldn't change the name. You love it just because you want to like flip it in somebody's face.
Because that's exactly what we've been dealing with. We're going to change this name, we're going to change that name, we're going to change this name because somebody's offended.
Let's leave Confederate statues up. You know, let's glorify.
Yes, the way you do that is not.
Because thank you, Andrew Johnson. Thank you, Rutherford B. Hayes. Reconstruction didn't happen, and that's why we have Jim Crow laws today. That's why we have a lot of what's going on in the South today. Oh, keep doing it.
Keep doing what you're doing, because you know what it's going to make? Not only a President Trump, it's going to give us a President Vance. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, but is it reasonable?
Next question.
I'm going to go back. Is it reasonable?
It's as a retaliation for the stupidity and political correctness. Ooh, fuck yeah, it's reasonable. Next question. You gave us advice for Democrats in Colorado.
Yeah.
Give me your advice for Republicans if they were ever smart enough to listen and if they want to regain control in Colorado.
First of all, one, don't let Dave Williams get away with this idea that the only way you get on the ballot is through caucus. That has to be stopped, because if you were to do that, Hurd goes away, Crank goes away.
And they get replaced by
Gabe
Democrats.
Goes away, and you get replaced with people on the ballot. Hey, it's great for us. Dave Williams is our secret weapon. Hallelujah, praise Jesus. We are going to have all Democrats. That is not healthy for the state. So one, make sure that doesn't happen. Two, find 2 or 3 great leaders and make sure that you give them everything that they need in order to succeed.
What makes a great leader for a Republican?
Somebody that appeals to the middle, that appeals to the unaffiliated that are out there. I mean, I'll give you an example. Barb Kirkmeyer. I'm not for sure she could ever survive a Republican primary. I would hope that she could. I'm probably not going to vote for her because I'm a true blue Democrat. I have to tell you, I would think twice, because she's effective and she knows how to work across the aisle and she's principled. Find people like that, then I think something could happen. But this concentration, this fascination, this obsession with we have to build like the blueprint, so let's go do the red print. We're going to do the underlying infrastructure for everything that we need in order for this to happen. I think we're in a moment where it's driven by personality. It's driven by charisma. And you've got to find the ones that actually touch that and figure out how you make that connection. And then play off of the fact that we tend to play left. Because I tell you, but for Michael Bennet and John Hickenlooper and Phil Weiser, where the Democratic Party could be today would be much farther left than that.
Incredible.
Because it is a controlling may not be the right word, but countervailing force in terms of what's going on within the party.
These are quick answers. I'm
sorry.
sorry Poor Damon's over there having to deal with a show that's way too long. Republicans want to win again. From a Republican point of view, and only a Republican point of view, would you support jungle primaries if you were a Republican and wanted to?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you were a Democrat, would you support jungle primaries?
If you care about democracy, you would.
I think we're in agreement on that.
Listen, something has to happen. The way the system is working today, newsflash, it's not working. And we have to do something, which is why I think we should have ranked choice voting, which is why I think we should have open primaries. No one's set up something that's going to do anything different that's going to solve any of this. So we need to be trying something. Otherwise, we're driving this in the ditch. And guess what? It's wet, it's muddy, and I don't know how we get out.
I'll agree with you on the open primaries. I won't on ranked choice voting, but there's a lot there. And my side hates me for wanting jungle primaries. You are a dear friend. I love fighting with you.
God bless.
Zdrovia. Thank you.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.